Hi pals, it's me, Artie, they them pronouns only, and this week's video I am talking about Quinni from Heartbreak because I love her. Yeah, unfortunately, because I am still not very well, this is not like properly scripted or nothing. I'm not gonna fucking lie. Basically, we first see Quinni with Darren, and they are basically like the sparkly queer kids who are also kind of just the social outcasts. Literally my first notes was just like, she's brightly coloured and glittery, very much dopamine dressing, not really giving a shit about the social standards for appropriate dress sense. And I mean, to be fair, as I said in my Heartbreak High like general overview video, it's a fashion show. I don't think anybody dresses like this lot in high school anywhere. And if they do, they're probably in the principal's office getting in trouble. Then we see her when we get the sex map thing. I literally forgotten what the label was. Something about flaps. But she doesn't understand what the label she's been given means, and she's very just like open up front and quite like loudly unsure of what this phrase means. I think that also really shows the same kind of thing, a lack of awareness of social expectations, because obviously a lot of the things that are on this wall are basically etching out where you are on the social totem pole in a lot of ways. Not the social totem pole, social hierarchy in the school. Don't know why I said totem pole. And this is kind of something that links to my last video, that a lot of the time my relationships that I had weren't because I necessarily wanted them, but because I had some kind of like deep subconscious understanding that there was like a desirability politics to it, and like there's a mixture of shame but also like a flaunting of sex and sex acts generally in a lot of white Western societies, that can be really amped up in like high school, secondary school, university, college sort of ages. So like part of it is the fact that she doesn't know what this word means, which is something that I also relate to, is that I definitely was quite naive and immature to a lot of the language around sex, I guess, but more so the slang. But then also the fact that she's kind of unable to read or understand that what's been written next to her name is probably not like good. They do dive more into that anyway in this episode, which I really liked. This phrase is obviously used to embarrass her, but she's so detached from those social norms that she's, for one, isn't aware that she's supposed to be embarrassed. Two, isn't aware of other people being embarrassed by this thing that she feels like she should be embarrassed herself. She's just completely oblivious to all of that. So yeah, she doesn't have that shame that everybody else might have if they saw this particular phrase or slang stuck next to their name on a wall, and asks Darren really loudly in front of everybody who's gathered in the hallway. However, even though she may be extremely naive in some of those kinds of contexts, she is also very, very good with the pattern recognition, which is one of my favourite things about autism, because she is kind of the only one who puts together very clearly and loudly that it must be somebody in their year who created this map, because there's not really anybody else outside of their year group. She's also not great at perceiving or understanding other people's personal space. Particularly earlier on in the first season, she's quite invasive to Anne-Marie's personal space. And obviously not in like a purposeful or antagonistic kind of way, just in more of like a curious way. Like this is the first time, because Anne-Marie is sort of deemed as one of the popular girls. I think Darren says that at one point, and Darren's talking shit about her. Quinny's just like, that's not fair, like we don't know her, she doesn't know us, she might be a really nice person. So this is sort of the first time where she might have been maybe more allowed within Amory's personal space or vicinity in any way, because she used to have this really close group of friends who were Harper, Sasha, Missy, before it got out that the map was her. After Amory gets beaten up by, I think it must have been Harper, but either way, she got a bloody nose and is like laying on the floor. Quinny's just in her face and then gets absolutely covered in blood when Amory sneezes. And she doesn't even really seem bothered by that. She's more concerned about the person herself. Yeah, for most of this first episode is just a lot of Quinny repeatedly asking like, why, what about that original phrase that was put next to her name, and like, you know, why is it bad? What does that mean? How do I know if I've got those? And her friend just keeps telling her to stop asking. Darren just seems to be so, I don't know whether they are embarrassed or whether they're just tired of that conversation, or whether they just don't feel comfortable talking about it because they seem to be more, because we don't really know Darren's sexuality specifically. It has never been said. I think in some ways it's good, because I think if the character did say, I think there's always going to be a group of people who are angry about it. But it seems that Darren only has romantic and sexual interest in men. So maybe Darren is less comfortable talking about and using those words and phrases that are more specific to vaginas or women in relationships, things like that. But also, I'm not necessarily saying that Darren's neurotypical. I'm not sure these characters are neurotypical, but being allistic and not autistic, Darren is maybe more susceptible to the social shame of things without them being like explicitly stated. But someone does explain to her what it is, but she doesn't understand it because the explanation is too literal. So she doesn't really get it initially. And then yeah, I mean, I think my point is just made by this next bit where she says, well, you can look for me and let me know. And Darren's like, no, I will not be doing that, thank you very much. But she doesn't even really understand the shame around naked bodies among friends, which honestly is how my autistic mother brought me up, which is very funny. We are getting a really good basis for like a starting point for an autistic character who doesn't understand or maybe even care about social rules, is very literal, naive about some of these kinds of things, but also someone who's not like really feeling shame. She does kind of have a small moment of feeling shame in this episode around this, but it is quite quickly kind of like gotten past. I do think maybe the one thing that's lacked a tiny bit in this show is that I don't think I've seen Quinny with many fidget toys. And I know she's not ADHD, but I know a lot of autistic people who aren't ADHD really benefit from basically fidget toys, because they're like sensory stimming toys that can help with, because you know, stimming is self-stimulation that is often a way of self-soothing, because I just don't really remember her having them. Like, we get the staple of her headphones quite a lot for like noise sensory issues. I didn't really mention this much in this video, I've realised. I yapped and yapped and yapped but didn't really mention this at all. But like, there are a lot of moments where you can see Quinny stimming like with her body, or like she could possibly be stimming in a way that is more of an undercover stim to try and fit in with her peers a bit more. Because I mean, like in this image, the lollipop, we're often seeing her with like a pen and a notepad, a diary, journal, whatever. I feel like that very much used to be my own sort of hidden stimming, was doodling, things like that. But yeah, I don't know, I just feel like I don't really remember many moments of her using fidget or stim toys, even within like the safety of her friends. We get a lot of moments with friends where Darren's like, do not fucking touch her, when she's like on the edge of meltdowns, but we don't really see a lot of self-soothing, I guess. I would like to see more of that. Anyway, and yeah, this is where the introduction of the SLT, sex education, sluts classes, twice a week in their own time. It seems to be that everybody has the same couple of free periods. I have a few little headcanons that a few of the other main cast are giving autism vibes. One of them is Malachi, and another one is Cash. So I wrote in my notes that Malachi is kind of autistic too, to be honest, because he walks into this sluts class and he's like, "What map?" just like really loudly. He's new there and is not abiding by social rules. And then he's like, "It's my first day, I shouldn't be here." And then he corrects the teacher on her own scenario, as she was the principal, where they were all like walking around shaking hands, and her initial thing was like, "Oh, you've now all got crabs," and then she's changed it to genital warts, and he was like, "It was crabs." So like, there are some other characters who are giving me a little hint of autism in their own way. We then have Quinny in the bathroom in a cubicle trying to take photos of herself to work out if she's got big flaps. And then she realises that Anne-Marie's been eating her lunch in the stall next to her by herself, hiding from everyone who hates her. So she leans over the top of the toilet, no regard for like anyone's privacy, or that maybe Anne-Marie might be going to the toilet. She just wants to talk to her about this. She then shares an embarrassing story about this, basically this dog shit that she thought was a gum nut, and the fact that then after that everyone just called her, I think they just called her gum nut for the rest of like the year or something, which is like a very it's a very like colloquial community kind of signifier of autism and neurodivergence in general, that a lot of people, when trying to relate to somebody else, often share their own anecdotes. A lot of the times it is not perceived well. However, I do feel like this was at least her showing a good example of like, I did this thing and really embarrassed myself, and then everyone called me this name that was really unfair and isolating for the rest of the year. So I understand that part of it if I don't necessarily understand the original action that you've done, which is definitely different to mine. Mine was being naive and overexcited. Yours was writing up people's sexcapades and rumours and kind of being a bit shitty about it, really. I don't care that much about the map, but it's not great, is it? But I do think people were particularly unfair to her. However, Anne-Marie is still very mean. Very mean to Quinny, which is, I think, a very accurate representation of how those kinds of conversations go. Even though Quinny's trying to be nice and is basically the only person in the whole school at that point trying to be nice to her, and except Malachi, who is also flirting with her. Like, Quinny is the only person who's trying to be nice to her and make her feel better, and it's just being pushed away, which is, I think, quite a common experience. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, she does tell Darren to not be mean about Anne-Marie, even though she is literally the one who wrote down that Quinny has big flaps. Quinny's retort to that is, well, Spider told her. She didn't just make that up. Spider said it to her, because we've been put on that map together and we've never even... Quinny's sexuality is quite open as well. I do enjoy the show not necessarily always defining everybody's sexualities immediately, because it does give that openness to flexibility for characters, openness for the fan base to identify with the characters. And I hope as well that maybe if we do see people who do identify in a certain way and maybe it changes over time, we'll see some of that, because that also happens. I've tried on different labels. Sometimes they don't fit, or sometimes they only fit for a little while, and that's okay. It's not always static, and sometimes you've just got to try things out for a bit. And I also actually mean that when it comes to sexuality stuff too. I know straight people who tried out some gay shit and were like, I don't think this is for me, and I respect that. I don't remember what my point was. Oh yeah. Quinny, yeah, her sexuality is quite open. We know that she's queer. We know that she's at least sapphic, because she does date and like have a big crush on Sasha in the season. But I do feel like she's quite open to interpretation. She's never made any statements that are quite specific, or like really any statements at all about her preference generally, just that she really fancies Sasha. By lighting, by lighting, by lighting, by lighting. And I think, again, that's another good representation in a lot of ways of there are statistics that show autistic people are more likely to be trans and queer and all queer than allistic people, but also neurodivergent people in general are more likely to be queer or trans. That's the end of that point. Quinny asks Amory why Harper hates her, you know, basically why Harper punched her in the face the other day, you know, remember when that happened? She's very upfront, again, doesn't really notice there's social rules here where she's not supposed to ask these uncomfortable questions of like, oh, that person was your best friend since you were 5, why does she hate you? But I think that also actually gives Amory maybe a good moment of like insight of like, hey, that's a really awkward question, but actually you're the only person who's noticed and asked me. Everybody else has just kind of hated me because of the map and taken her side even though I don't even know what happened. I also just want to quickly put in there, Darren's an astrology gay, and I really appreciated that Quinny is a Libra because same. Same, bitch. Same. And honestly, there are I love my astrology memes. There are so many good Libra astrology memes that are literally just like, you're autistic. You're autistic. And I did a video ages ago that really flopped, but I still thought, I thought it was like a really fun video for me, where I just went through my chart and was like, hey, look, autism, ADHD, PPD, just general trauma and mental illness. And I enjoyed that because I'm also an astrology gay and I'm a Libra. So I also feel like she's kind of one of the few characters who actually has a bit more of a diplomatic edge to her. She obviously shows that already in this episode where she's defending Amory when she doesn't know her at all, because she's logical, because she's autistic. That's putting it really like simply. It's obviously not that simple, but I can say what I want. It's my channel. Quinny then also asks some more awkward questions to Amory. She asks if she's sad and what she's most sad about, and then goes ahead and lists the reasons why she thinks Amory is or would be sad. That last bit's a little bit much, babe, but very, very reasonable. I try not to do that unless they are my friends and understand that I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to show them I understand and I love them. They then have like the suggestion of doing some scream therapy, which is the only time they do it. I wish they did it more. There's probably like quite a few good opportunities for them to have incorporated the scream therapy more often and incorporated the roof more often, but they just kind of wasn't. So this is the only time this ever happens. But yeah, Quinny blocks her ears when everyone else is shouting. I would do the same because I really also hate the sensory feeling of ear defenders because they smush my glasses into my head and that hurts. Quinny's contribution to screaming therapy is shouting about the vagina thing. Amory apologises for writing it and Quinny says, you know, don't worry about it, I'm not upset anymore. I just wanted to know if my flaps were big. were too big, rather. That's the correct quote. And Amory says, I don't think they can be too big. And Quinny says, yep, that's what my research says too. Which is a very me sentence. Welcome to my channel. I don't stop yapping about my special interests of different parts of medical research. They then get Amory to tell them where like this party location is, because there's a party going on, but no one will tell, no one's like invited Quinny or Darren. Nobody wants Amory there, but Amory knows where this location is because she used to be part of the in crowd, which also doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. She's very uncool. What do you mean? Darren hears where the location is, but doesn't know where that is. Amory knows where it is, so they all get up and go to the party in the cemetery, which also only happens once, even though it's apparently a thing they do regularly. bring back the cemetery parties. I fucking love a cemetery. When they get there, Malachi's there and he's like flirting with Anne-Marie and he's like, oh look, no one's looking at you, they look at me because I'm dancing. I love this man. And then Quinny's like jumping around really excited because she wants to dance too, so she drags Anne-Marie onto the dance floor with her and then everyone starts dancing and I love it. She's just like, I am excited to do this thing and I'm confident enough to go fucking do it because I don't care. You all think I'm weird anyway. It seems to be a lot clearer later on when she's with Sasha that no one actually knows she's autistic. You know, which is like a very interesting extra layer. Like if Sasha doesn't know or didn't know before Quinny telling her, does that mean the whole school doesn't know and that everyone is just picking up on the vibe and that's why that she's an outcast? As a teenager who was not diagnosed, so had no way of possibly even saying to people that they were autistic, but people did not like me and I was an outcast because of a vibe and nothing that actually ever happened. Interesting. Also, some of my social faux pas, which I can reflect on now and say, oh wow, yeah, that was a bit yikes, but I genuinely just had no fucking idea. I had no idea that was a social rule. Whoops, I am nearly 30. Gotta move on sometime. Quinny decides that she's using this party as well to confront Spider about what he went around saying about her by basically giving him a vagina anatomy class, which again, I think is very funny. She's done a lot of research, put a lot of effort into it, and it initially comes across as very naive, but actually, because she's so used to people treating her this way, she's learned how to like twist people's answers back at them. And I love this, like, I love this because like, yeah, it looks like she's about to really embarrass herself. She chucks this thing in, she starts going through talking about vaginas and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, disgusting. And she's like, oh, I thought you liked vaginas. I do like vaginas and all that sort of, you know, some like really silly arguing back and forth. She's like, well, I wasn't sure you knew what a vagina really looked like because you're lying about seeing mine. So I wasn't sure you'd ever actually seen a vagina. And everyone's just like laughing at him. And he's like, well, of course we didn't have sex. Why would I have sex with a... Okay, so like the subtitles on Netflix, I think were incorrect. I can't remember what the subtitles said, but I'm pretty sure he calls her a fucktard. But I can't remember what the subtitle was, but it was just something that I've never heard anyone ever use before. But listening to what he said sounded much closer to fucktard, which is a slur. It comes from the R slur, which is so fun. And then, yeah, I think Missy and Sasha are the ones who really witness this whole thing and go and tell her that she's really like funny and iconic for making him so like pissed off and triggered by that. At the end of the party, Darren and Quinny go home with Anne-Marie. The party's not over yet, but like Anne-Marie had a blow up with Harper. So group strength, loyalty, all that. In our next episode, we see a lot more of Quinny's autism. This is when we also see that she's got this crush on Sasha. She's very nervous to ask somebody out. She doesn't know how to do it. I don't know if she's ever asked anybody out or ever been asked out, which would have been a mood for me too in school. But then when she finally like decides to do it and does do it, she's very just like upfront, very autistic about it. She's just very straightforward, but also then is a little bit too honest and says some things that she doesn't like about Sasha that I thought were really funny. The fact that she has empath in her bio, which is just such a funny overarching addition as well. Again, back to my last Heartbreak High video where I talk about Sasha and how unbearable of a character she is based on what we are provided at current. That yeah, it's just very funny that she describes herself as an empath or empath, whatever, when she is just so unbelievably detached from anybody's feelings, I think including her own. And she says that she thinks Sasha likes the sound of her own voice too much. Hard agree, Quinny. And yeah, she kind of just leaves and then keeps coming back to like clarify things, clarify that it's actually like a romantic date. And oh, by the way, yeah, this is the pen I borrowed. I meant to give that back to you anyway, bye. It was very awkward, like, by the way, it's like, same, me too. Always wanting to make sure that your intentions are understood and you understand other people's intentions, because the amount of times that you have either misread the situation, not read into the situation you're meant to read into, or read too much into one that you're not meant to read into. The fact that she's just like, by the way, it's a date, this is a date. It's very much like, same, me. They go on a date in a very loud restaurant that is apparently like Sasha's favourite local restaurant. Quinni was there on time / maybe even a bit early. Sasha was late, which does my head in. Does my head in. I am a chronically early person because I have been so badly traumatised and humiliated in front of large groups of people if I've ever been late, whether it's by accident or on purpose, that now I am always chronically early to things, and people turning up pretty late or kind of blasé about when they turn up really bothers me, because it does kind of insinuate that they don't actually really value your time that much. And as well, when you're autistic, you have this set expectation of how the plans are going to go, and if they don't go like that, it's really hard to adjust to it and manage like the sensory impact of that. I think this was also like quite an interesting section for the portrayal of autism in like an over-stimulating environment. Like, we can hear Sasha talking, but we can't really hear what she's saying. Everything's kind of blurry and like very like zoomed in and out. We can hear all these different noises more clearly than we can hear the person trying to speak to us. There's a lot of moving around, there's lots of light. All of that overpowers Sasha and her voice because Quinni is so sensitive to sensory stimuli, which is big mood. I fucking hate restaurants. Sasha then gets really pissed off and feels like Quinni didn't care about anything she said, wasn't even trying. So like when they went to the party after dinner, she just went off to find her friends. Quinni needed to regulate for a while, so went to the bathroom with Darren and Anne-Marie. This is where Darren stops Anne-Marie from hugging Quinni because that can send her over the edge into a meltdown, and then just sends her off. They're just like, go girly, go somewhere else. Darren goes and gets supplies for them to hang around in the bathroom for a while so that Quinni can regulate herself. And I think that this was just like a really nice depiction of holistic and autistic friendship possibilities, like what that can look like, how you can support an autistic friend if you're not autistic yourself. You don't necessarily have to do anything. Sometimes just being there in case you're needed is helpful. It's very similar to like parallel play. Instead of like in a play kind of scenario, it's more of like a support scenario that you are showing support by just being in the same room as them. When she's finally ready to leave the bathroom, she sees Sasha and then goes over to speak to her and tells her that she's autistic. And then here are some of the reasons why I find Sasha unbearable. She's like, I've met autistic people and you're like emotionally intelligent. And like Quinni's ready to fuck up. She's like, I'm out bitch, bye. And she says, okay, bye, see ya. I would also just like to use this moment to mention that I was one of the autistic people that Sia did respond to directly on Twitter during that period of time. Funny little anecdote I like to tell people. As Sasha stops Quinni from leaving and says, oh, obviously I have some research to do, but like, I really like you and I want to get to know you, and then gives Quinni a kiss. And again, I think this is a really good example of like how confusing it can be as an autistic person dating non-autistic people. Sasha clearly values the being upfront, but doesn't seem to value or understand literally anything else about being autistic. Quinni gets good things when she's upfront with Sasha about stuff initially. Eventually, doesn't go so well. And that's even more confusing because you're like, well, you were always happy about me being upfront before, so what's different now? Go watch my last video about why I've been single for 6 years, because this is some of the reasons for that I just didn't go into, because it's a very long and complex story. She does also correct Anne-Marie on her use of ableist language, which was just the word stupid. However, they use a lot of ableist language in this show. It's something I mentioned in the last video I made on Heartbreak High, is that quite a lot of slang in Australia is ableist. It's the same in the UK, it's the same in America, but I feel like we all have kind of different words that we all kind of deem more okay to use. You know, that's why they are like very openly just like bird psycho. And I'm just like, the who now? This is again something that only happens once and never comes up ever again, that I mentioned in that last video, that seems a little bit like, obviously it's tiring policing people on those sorts of things, but also kind of just feels, I don't know, a little bit virtue signal-y. I could not tell you another show that really does that, where they point out ableist language. However, because they only do it once, it doesn't feel very genuine. Like, even if she doesn't do it all the time, I would give it a pass. If she did it maybe more often, it would feel a bit more important to the character. but because it's only done once and never again in 2 seasons, it feels kind of virtue signally to me. And also the fact it's on stupid versus like some of the more severe words I used. Sasha preemptively asked Jojo, the teacher of like the sex ed thing, if their group could work in like a quieter space, keeping Quinny in mind that she clearly struggles in louder environments, and like this is such a big mood. I'm sure I talked about this in one of my autism videos, so this was really nice to Quinny. Quinny was like, oh wow, I have a partner now who actually is thinking about me and is preemptively thinking about adjustments that could be made for me that actually would like, I just can't be bothered to be asking for and fighting for all the time. Because honestly, sometimes I don't understand why. It's strange to me that, you know, if you speak up for yourself, you're more likely to be brushed off. But if somebody else speaks up for you, they're more likely to be listened to. Especially when it comes to like bias, bigotry, ableism, adaptions, that it's just very strange. She's very appreciative of this, so they're all outside on the benches doing their work instead of in the classroom with, what, 2 or 3 other groups. Quinny also shows that like adapting to somebody's change of pronouns is doable as an autistic person, because she very easily calls Darren they, them, and any other like gender neutral or fluid terms that Darren's character wants, which is often an argument used by a lot of cis, usually white, autistic people. It's like, oh, it's too hard to change my language. It's like, yeah, mate, like, babes, I know. And like, I'm not perfect because, oh my God, it is hard to remember the correct like words, or even the words that you just want sometimes. But my guy, it's not impossible. You have to try. And if you care about people, you have to put the effort in, mate. The next episode, this is the one that's trigger warned for police brutality against a First Nations person. It's Mardi Gras. Amory says that she took a self-care day, which is a euphemism that Quinny did not get and was just like, good for you, and took it very literally. They also have to explain like drug euphemisms to Quinny, but she does pick up right away that Darren has a little thing for cash. She's very good at picking up these non-verbal cues, and I feel like that's in like maybe even like a hyper vigilant kind of way, in the way that I also identify with that. I'm very hyper vigilant about my interactions with people and interactions I'm witnessing among people, that I am more likely to notice and pick up when people are gaslighting and using the Darvo technique, because I've witnessed it so many times. A lot of the times it can be a lot more reliable to read people's like body language or what their like signs, signals they're giving off to other people than it is to trust what they say out of their mouth. And like, whilst I don't think body language is a real science, it isn't. It has been proven that it is bullshit and very ableist and racist and probably other things that I don't even know because I haven't really looked into it fully. I just know it's bullshit. There is still that element of a lot of particularly allistic people communicate a lot through their body language more honestly than they do through just their fucking mouth. And sometimes it's a lot easier as an autistic person to purely base your perceptions off of that rather than off of what people say. And that's why I was very good at flirting and picking people up before I realised I was autistic. That neurodivergent people overall are less easy to read because all of our body language is a little bit confusing to people, including other neurodivergents. So, boom, that's what you just got to tell me. That's what you got to tell me. Quinny and Sasha are kissing under the covers in the nurse's office. Quinny invites Sasha to the pre-drinks that she's having with her friends at, I think, Darren's house, and doesn't pick up on that hesitation that Sasha has when she tells Sasha who will be there. Well, mainly Anne-Marie. Sasha, I think, texts Quinny very last minute that she can't make it to the pre-drinks, even though the pre-drinks have already started and already been going on for a while. So this obviously throws Quinny off quite a lot. She's really upset and disappointed. That means that her friends aren't really able to like talk to her in person in like a more normal people environment before they're going out basically clubbing, because it looks like they're at a club. So yeah, like everybody in a small group feels let down and can sense that she feels let down as well. At the party later, Quinny like ices Sasha out a bit. Sasha then becomes like too like mothering and overbearing and is like smothering Quinni and is always like answering for her, assuming what she wants, telling her what she does or doesn't need. So like later Quinni finds her in the bathroom snorting ket with Missy, and like she does that again there, and Quinny's like, well, you haven't actually asked me that. So yeah, she's taking a break in the bathroom and she's like having like a bit of a conversation with Harper. Harper is also another one that I kind of think could be a little autistic. Maybe that's why she's such a bitch. Said lovingly. Because I am a bitch. I'm a bitch. I know I'm a bitch. It's fine. I'm not trying to purposefully harm people, but I do come across as a bitch because I don't take people's shit anymore. Relevant to this next thing I was gonna say, Quinny compliments Harper on like how she handled the cop they had in their sex ed class, where the girls and boys were separated and the girls had to learn self-defense whilst the boys did something else. Quinny sort of opens up and says like she's scared of speaking her mind in case people don't like her anymore, and Harper's like, well, fuck them, basically. I'm like, slay. That's my brand of autism. Slay. And also BPD. And I feel like this is quite a good, at least, starting point for some of the plot of season 2, where she, you know, is clearly so scared of being a more truer version of herself around her friends in case she doesn't have friends anymore, which is like a very common and normal fear among autistic people. Quinny is then later in like a quieter area on the sofa. Sasha finds her while she's absolutely fucked off her face. Quinny then confronts her about like why she's upset. You know, it's all about the plans and the routine, the rigid sense of like these rigid needs and rules that just one last minute change throws the whole thing out of whack. Even though nothing else of the night changed, it completely threw her because she was preparing for this particular thing to be happening and it just didn't even happen at all because her girlfriend just bailed on her with no real reasons, fake reasons. And I think she sensed that as well. In this moment, Quinny stands up for herself and like stands up for her own like sense of agency, but then she decides to say that she also loves Sasha back. I'm like, oh my god, why did you say that when Sasha said it to you and she was like, oh, I'm high? Like, why would you say it back? I don't know, I would just not have. Especially seeing as Quinny doesn't seem to drink or like take anything that alters her state of mind. It's not like she is also intoxicated. But I mean, she's a teenager, so obviously I'm giving that a pass because it's accurate to being a teenager. My thoughts and feelings are very strong in this moment where I just think Sasha is an ableist shit who is very good at weaponizing therapy language and a lot of political language to make out as like she's a good or better person than she actually is. And yeah, I just think Quinny deserves better. But also I just think that Sasha deserves a better, more in-depth plot line. So season 3, like we have a few weird episodes, which I don't mind. I quite like the period of time where not every episode had to be about forwarding plot, but was maybe a bit more fillery, getting to know the characters more like deeply. I do think that is like an art form we have lost a bit in present day TV, and that's where they had a lot of failings in season 2. We get another episode that's a bit more Quinny centered. We see her room, it's full of a lot of soft toys, it's very like bright girly pastel. She has a daily tasks poster. She has a fucking pet frog. She has a fucking pet frog. I don't think we see him in season 2. Where's the frog? We saw more of Root. Where's the frog? I don't even know what the frog's name is. I'm non-binary and autistic. I need to know about the frog. This is the episode where we get to know a bit more about one of her special interests, which is this book series. And she has been waiting for this meet and greet with the writer for a really long time and preparing her cosplay and stuff like that. Quinny has gay dads. I feel like we don't really get a lot of her relationship with her parents, which I would like to see more of. I want to see how her parents have and are supporting her. I'd also like to know, is she adopted or is she also an IVF baby? And then yeah, we just see a lot more of her being very much a dopamine dresser in the kind of more like obvious and original term for it, because like I would say I also dopamine dress. What brings me dopamine is very different to what typical dopamine dressers do. So like she's very colourful, sparkly, accessories and jewellery, which I can't abide. Once I realised I was autistic and I became chronically ill, can't stand it. Quinni is being like good about the cash situation. Maybe they don't have the same expectations, wants or needs in romantic relationships as each other. Maybe season 3, hold on, maybe season 3 should have more of Darren asking Quinni for help communicating with Cash because I think Cash is autistic as well. But regardless, I think that Cash really just wants Darren to try to have open communication with him because he is confused and doesn't understand anything, and that's why I think he's autistic. He's just so lost. He doesn't understand what's going on most of the time or why Darren's acting the way they're acting. And I think Quinni could really help. I feel like that would be a really nice example as well. We see a lot of Quinni's friends doing things for Quinni, and then season 2, Quinni unmasking and showing actually how much she does for them as well by taking away what she does. But I would like to actually see more of those like interactions with her holistic friends where they're learning like actually a lot of these things are more natural to autistic people would also benefit them as well in their lives. Not necessarily all the time, but definitely in some circumstances. And I think that would be one of them is communication among each other as friends and in their relationships. Because as well, like I said, she's very logical, she's very diplomatic, she doesn't really jump on the bandwagon of everybody sucks because you're my friend and they hurt you. She's very much like, that really sucks that you feel that way, but also actually I think your emotions are clouding your ability to judge the situation because it could also mean this, this, this and this. But you don't know because you've not asked them the question. We have this nice moment again where like Darren knows and remembers that Quinni's like whole big special interest event thing is happening that evening, even though they're throwing a party with Anne-Marie at Anne-Marie's house, when Sasha just completely fucking forgot. Like, babe, you just started dating. How did you already forget something that's really important to your girlfriend? But okay. Quinni isn't really sure if she's going to go to this party after the event because she wasn't planning on it, and she knows that what she's going to be doing is probably going to take quite a bit of energy. She's planned the travelling there, which maybe means it's not as close as it could have been, you know, maybe she's travelling a bit out of the way. Instead of me going to like a local town, it's me going to Brighton or even going to London for something, you know, like that involves more planning than if I just want to go into a local town to where I live. She kind of gets swept away because Sasha, again, doesn't shut up, doesn't really let Quinni speak, doesn't really listen to Quinni. After school, Quinni gets into bed and just like falls asleep, and relatable content. I think I spent most of my teen years exhausted because social expectations are tiring, especially being in a school where you have to abide by school kind of rules but also abide by the social hierarchy kind of rules. Sasha's being like really weirdly like snooty again when Quinni wants to start getting ready and still go and get her buses and stuff. Quinni's dressing up in cosplay, like that might take a while, so like yeah, she is getting ready really early, but also if something goes wrong, she needs that, me speaking from personal experience, if something goes wrong, she then has a lot more time to deal with it, sort it, fix it, and regulate herself to then still be able to go do the thing. If you do things last minute and they go wrong, you don't have the time to fix it, regulate yourself and still be able to go. And yeah, Sasha's kind of getting kind of gaslighty with Quinni in this episode, like in this moment. She completely derails Quinni's plans and then suggests that she's overthinking her own needs, and it's like, no babes, I've lived here in this body and this brain my whole life, and it's taken me this long to work out actually what my needs are. They might seem like overthinking to you, but they are just thinking to me. She's like, oh, I want to go get ice cream, I want to go do this, I want to go blah blah. Like, we've got loads of time, I'll make sure you get there on time. She also doesn't understand that these kind of events involve queuing up and waiting outside. So like, she probably wanted to go early so she could be at the front, get a good seat, you know, something like that. Quinni doesn't want ice cream, she doesn't want to go for a drink with Sasha, but Sasha made them get off the bus for a drink, and then Sasha sees a friend at the drink place. I can't remember, I think it was a boba place. So then she's like chatting non-stop to her friend and basically forgets Quinni is there. Quinni becomes really anxious because she just wants to get to this fucking meeting. And then she starts getting like a lot of sensory overwhelm because obviously the bus is loud. Sasha doesn't shut the fuck up to her friend on the bus. They stuck Quinni in between the two of them. I mean, I know it's for cinematic things. I know it's for the show. But like, imagine being sat between two people who are talking at each other and you're not really part of this conversation at all and don't want to be. And then they get really weird and judgy with you because you don't want to participate with the conversation, and puts her ear defenders on, and like the other person's like,
is she okay?
And he's pulling a funny like judgmental face as if she can't see you there, you bitch. You're literally here, you bitch. I can see and hear you, you fucking... It's mental illness, mate. But autistic people are rude, don't worry. Autistic people are rude. And then like Sasha's even more of a knob.
Yeah, she gets stressed out sometimes. She's kind of on the spectrum.
All of this is as if Quinny can't fucking hear you, bitch. You're sat next to her. Ear defenders aren't like that good. And also, quick shout out that the author is the community channel, Natalie. I used to watch her back in the day. Quinny gushes to the author when she's getting her book signed, and the author is so sweet and lovely to her. But then like Sasha's off fucking texting people looking like a miserable cunt. Why did you come here? She's not even nearby so she could take a photo for Quinny. For me personally, either stay the fuck home or be a bit more enthusiastic about me being enthusiastic about this thing I give a shit about, and take a fucking photo. That's the only reason why you're here, mate. Take a good photo of me. Not even there to take a fucking photo. And then yeah, Quinny's excitedly talking about the evening, on the bus on the way back home. Sasha's being a moody bitch, not listening to anything she's saying. Quinny's talking about how like she thinks, actually in the future I want to be a writer now. I think like that's what I want to do. And Sasha's replies,
I want to get pissed.
As if those things are even like slightly comparable. Imagine saying to someone, oh yeah, I really want to be a doctor. I want to go take fucking drugs. Okay, go take your fucking drugs then. Fuck off. Like, and then Quinny's honest again, because usually that goes well. And she says, you know, she doesn't think she can deal with going to a party right now. And Sasha's then being really off with her. And so she's like, are you upset with me? And then Sasha then goes off about how like I don't want to be here. This is not what I think is fun. And Quinny's really confused, obviously. And it's like, I thought you wanted to do this with me. And she's like, I do all these things for you, but what about me? Do you ever think about me? It's hard being with you when I just want to be like a normal teenager. The rage inside me. This is the main foundation of why I really do not like Sasha. But I hope she'll improve. Quinny just replies with, so I'm not normal enough for you? Just saying what Sasha meant, but just more blunt. And Sasha's like,
oh, don't pull the autism card on me. You know what I mean.
Yeah, you meant the autism. You meant the autism. What else did you mean? If you would like to explain what you meant and that explain how it wasn't the autism, go right fucking head, mate. Quinny just says, it's a lot for me too, Sasha. It's my whole life. Slay Quinny. Then we have a meltdown scene at home, which I think is chef's kiss. It's horrible, but like, it's good. Yeah, she's like on the floor, rocking, crying, shouting, hitting herself, hitting the floor after like ripping off different pieces of clothing, having sort of destroyed her room a bit as well, like destroyed the poster that I think she just bought too. Darren comes over later to see her and just to be with her for a bit before the party later on. And then the next day, the way I described it, I think it's just so sad but so accurate. It's just Quinny looks less sparkly like that. Quinny looks less sparkly that day. Both literally and metaphorically. And she just looks so exhausted and frazzled. Darren helped her to tidy her room and put things back on the wall and stuff like that. And that's what was so like precious about this friendship to me, was that, you know, Darren saw her at some of her ugliest moments, that she can't help those things. They would just be there with her and would just quietly, unquestioningly support her through those moments. And that's why
Darren was character assassinated in season 2.
Because where did that go? Who was Darren in season 2? Wasn't this Darren? Who was that? Imposter. We then have a period of time where Quinny is no longer speaking. They use the term non-verbal in the show, but obviously this was a couple of years ago. There has been quite a few debates over the years about what is the best, most accurate terminology for what is kind of often considered as selective mutism in medical settings and shit. Darren also has to tell Sasha to like give Quinny some space because Quinny is in a very sensitive space at the moment and is unable to speak vocally to people. They have the in-school protest. Quinny spends the whole thing with a dog. Me, there's a dog, that's me. fucking love dogs. I am autistic, I love dogs. Quinni's dad is texting her to check that she's okay as he waits outside the protest, supporting her, but also available to support her in other ways if needed. Sasha asks if she can sit next to Quinni, and Sasha's whole apology is just kind of about her, not about how she's impacted Quinni. Quinni's tapping herself, so Sasha decides she should go. Quinni writes to Darren, am I too much? And they say, yeah, but you're my too much. In season 1, for Darren, loving Quinni as she is easy. And Darren has their whole own issues in season 1 about also being too much to be loved, which is like, as such a rude. Hard to love, I think is what Darren's words were more specifically. These two as friends love each other as they are in season 1. Like, that's what's just so lovely about it, is that they know each other isn't perfect, they know each other isn't easy, but they're always there and they're always supportive. However, they're not necessarily enabling the worst parts of the other person, which I think is often not something that's very clear or obvious in a lot of shows and relationships like that. Obviously, their protest works. Jojo turns up. First time Quinni speaks in however long it has been is to say that Jojo's here. Everyone goes outside. Quinni hugs Jojo because, as well, she doesn't really either understand or care about the social rules of, you know, you're not supposed to hug your teachers. Final episode is like the new, or at least, I don't know, they use a different classroom for like the sluts class, and it looks like one of the original classrooms from the original show. I don't know if you can hear that, the ice cream fans here. Kind of terrifying. But yeah, it looks like one of the classrooms that they used regularly in the original 1990, I think it's 1994 or 1996 when it started, show. But like, there's just not enough media talking about this show for me to actually be able to work it out without having to do all the labour myself, so I can't be bothered. So this is just me guessing based off of my memory. The protest actually also brought good press to the school, which was needed, and the sex ed classes are going to continue when they were going to be cancelled. Big finales is that, you know, Cash comes running in, declares love, gives Darren a snog, and is immediately pinned to the table and arrested. Spider says something really annoying. I think it's something about,
Oh, Darren wants Cash's Eshe babies.
and Quinny's just like,
Shut the fuck up, Spider.
you're ruining this moment, and I will fight you, you bitch. And then the kind of last moment really have of the season, the rest of them left, who are a little friendship group. So Malachi, Darren, Quinni, Amory, Harper are all sat at the beach together. They're all just sat there and they decide they're gonna go swimming. And then on with season 2. Season 2, as an autistic, I am gonna say it again, Harper's mullet could not have grown in the amount of time that was supposed to have happened between season 1 and 2. Impossible. I do not believe you. We've got the election season, of course, which I talked about in more detail. Sasha is still unbearable in this season. We don't get a lot of Quinni really in this season. I think a lot of Sasha in this season is just virtue signal after virtue signal. The way she calls marginalised genders non-males is like a virtue signal sort of thing, because we are still centering men in that sentence instead of everybody else. We realise that Bird Psycho is after Anne-Marie. Quinni like locks on to finding out who this person is. Also, I don't think I did this on purpose, but I think that's the terminology they use in Skin season 2 around JJ. She is then locked on to trying to work out who Bird Psycho is. Everybody's busy with their own shit now. You know, Darren has Cash, Anne-Marie has Harper again, because they're friends, and like Harper has joined their friendship group. Quinni is quite open to Harper about how she's a little bit like struggling to get used to like all the changes that are happening, because it was just her before, it was her by herself. She didn't really have any friends. Then it was her and Darren. Then it was her, Darren, and Anne-Marie, and she like had to adjust to walking three in a row. But now that there's 4 of them with Harper, she now has to like adjust how they all walk as a group so that she also still feels involved. Who else has the trauma of always being the one who has to end up walking in the road? Because I do. Nobody wanted to walk side by side with me. So yeah, she's like not saying it negatively, she's just being honest, and honestly Harper takes it really well. Actually, I think Harper is just like, yeah, no worries, like that makes sense, like thank you for letting me join you guys. And it's like really not made into a big deal. And I do like that there has been quite a lot of normalization around adjusting to Quinni's needs. However, season 2, what the fuck? Got a little bit of like Sasha is stroppily taking the rubbish out from her home, and Quinny interrogates her about bird psycho. She's like, it could possibly be you, even though you're a vegan. However, you eat duck, so maybe you could murder a bird and stick it in someone's bag. And I think it's quite a funny little change in how they film this section, or how they've put this section together. Give it like a film noir, detective, crime, black and white toning, and also like different music. Definitely very, yeah, film noir kind of crime-esque. Quinny's very good at analysing a lot of data, very good at picking up on small details and inconsistencies. Notices that actually Sasha is a fucking hypocrite because she was actually eating duck at a restaurant on the night when the attack happened, when she's meant to be vegan. So whilst it does mean that she didn't do it, it does also show that she's a hypocrite and kind of a douchebag for her like moral superiority that she shows other people, when actually she's not even sticking to her own perceived moral. Oh, you know what? Maybe that's why I feel like these two are opposites in that way. That like Quinny just has a moral compass that she sticks to, and like that's it. It only changes if you provide her with evidence. Very autistic mood. Sasha, like most autistic people, but not everybody, but like there's definitely quite a lot of people who are like this, who can also be autistic as well. I'm not saying it's not, like autistic people could never. She is like how a lot of neurotypicals have rules that they don't actually even follow, but if autistic people don't follow the rules, they get in trouble. So it's like she has an outward moral compass that she shows everybody else to try and make herself seem more superior, but actually behind closed doors, it's not that she may not necessarily even believe those things. She might believe those things, but she's not actually doing them to the degree that she is putting across to everybody. I think that maybe Quinny's just like unrelenting standards and rigidity of following her own moral compass is actually very threatening to Sasha. Maybe season 3 will be more about that and will give Sasha some growing room now that they are more so on like okay terms by the end of season 2. Quinny is with Anne-Marie as they're digging up the Cumlord's written feelings. Anne-Marie finds one that says, "Forget Anne-Marie," which could literally be anybody. If Anne-Marie paid any attention to anything that happened in the first season, it could have also been Spider who was writing Forget Anne-Marie, because he was madly not in love with her, but you know, like he was infatuated with her and was very much humiliated by her. It could have been Malachi, and then as we all know now, it also could have been Rowan. I'm just like, do you even know what Malachi's handwriting looks like? How long were you friends and dating for and sat next to each other in class that you don't know what his handwriting looks like? Plot holes? Many in this season. Hello, I'm autistic. So she gets really upset and runs off, and you're like, I'm confused. I think Cash comes back to school on the same day that Malachi and Rowan have kind of started officially seeing each other. Cash comes back, Quinny and Darren are like surprised, excited, yay, happy, and then Quinny, I think they were sat on a bench together talking about Malachi. Quinny is like sees them walking together very close, and she's like talking about it out loud, and then it's like, oh, gay. But like again, based entirely off of body language. She doesn't know anything that's going on, which is basically the whole plot of this season of her, is that nobody bothers to keep her in the loop about anything. Do none of you have a phone? Can't any of you just text her some updates, you know? I'd like to know what's going on. So she's the one that really puts it together properly, and Anne-Marie loses her shit and is like, right, we're going to go after Bird Psycho. Too busy thinking about Bird Psycho now to think about my ex-boyfriend having a new boyfriend, because he's bisexual. Then they have the school camp. I love a school camp, like episode thing. I'm, however, personally very pissed because they get nice little cabins, whereas when I had to go, well, I didn't have to go really. I had to go to Wales and we had to sleep in these big cold tents, and Wales is wet. It was cold and wet, and I just noted that I thought it was very funny that they snuck alcohol in by using Harper, the really skinny one who wears massive baggy clothes, and just taping them all to her. I just thought that was very funny. And then they end up with Zoe in the cabin, so I think it's Zoe, Quinny, Amory, Harper. I feel like there's one missing. Who's missing? I don't remember. I think it's also interesting that everyone still goes and parties in Amory's room, even though they all fucking hate her again, because they all think she's bird psycho now as well. And then they start playing Never Have I Ever. Quinny wakes up in the night and sees Zoe looking suspicious, rummaging around in other people's bags, and challenges her about stuff. She thinks that Zoe is the next most likely person to be bird psycho. Then Quinny can't find her phone. They did a recording like the previous day or something of like them talking about who they think bird psycho is, and that ends up being played on loudspeaker in front of everybody. Harper says that she thinks Anne is too stupid to be bird psycho. Missy would do anything Sasha tells her to do. Amory says Malachi is a gaslighter. You know, things that like are not necessarily like true or fair on any of those people, but definitely things that are very normal to like vent about. Yeah, like things you wouldn't ever really say to the person because you know that's not really true. PE teacher then takes over, makes everyone goes on a hike blindfolded, and just leaves them all out there. They split into groups instead of working together. Ant then eats all of their food. Because he's like, oh, what? I faint if I don't eat every 30 minutes. Headcanon for next season, Ant has POTS. Quinny has an idea about how to find their way back based on logic, things she's read, and is completely ignored. They stumble upon some magic mushrooms. Anthony eats them all right away. Or like eats some right away, he doesn't eat them all. Everybody except Quinny takes some shrooms. And Quinny just spends the time laughing at everybody being weird. She's the one person who's not being really strange for once and watching everyone else just doing some weird shit. She gets to be normal today. Throughout the evening as well, she's trying to work out who bird psycho is whilst also trying to be at least a bit responsible over everybody else who's completely off their face. Her and Amory kind of interrogate Zoe, work out that it definitely isn't Zoe, that she's not bird psycho. So in the morning, Quinny is woken up because she can hear her phone ringing. It's her alarm for her morning meds. So she's trying to find what bag has her phone in, and she's so close before she's bitten by a very poisonous snake, and then has to lay as still as possible and as calmly as possible until other people wake up and find her. My friend B said that she's dying in the most autistic way, which is that like she explains what happens, that everyone needs to be calm to keep her calm, to prevent the venom from spreading faster in her body, and she needs to breathe. They all have to work as a team to get her out of there. They follow her advice from the previous day. Missy heard, paid attention, listened to her, so they all start following downstream to start to find their way back. And then yeah, Jojo turns up with the crew, whoever the crew are. I've forgotten, the mountain people. I don't know. Quinny goes to hospital and spends quite a bit of time having to recover at home, which then isolates her even more. Everyone decides for her what to tell her, what she should be privy to about what's been going on and any updates happening, which just makes it a lot worse for her in general. There's no preparation for any of this. It all just suddenly happens when she comes back. She gets a get well card that's signed by basically everybody except Rowan, conveniently, and she gets excited about using it as like a handwriting sample to work out who isn't bird psycho based off of the posters and shit, which for one, why is bird psycho just writing in his normal handwriting? Plot hole again. Get crafty, use some collaging. And then yeah, we see her like big detective wall map. Darren and Amory get really concerned for her. Quinny rocks up at school in her PJs one day and speaks to Jojo about her phone and wants to like do everything possible to try and find the original phone, hopefully work out who it was who has it. Like she asks for a locker search, and then yeah, people are just concerned about her obsession and trying to tell her she needs to rest and start shutting off more and more things about anything that's going on away from her. She was all, I didn't mention this earlier I don't think, but she was Amory's co-captain for the election thing, and even Amory's not even bothering to update her on anything to do with that, even just to like keep her in the know. Are they texting her at all? It's like what are you texting her about if you're like just not telling her anything about what's going on? So then the group meet to talk about Quinny, to try and give her like a nice day or whatever, give her something else to think about other than bird psycho, of things she enjoys. So it's Harper, Cash, Amory and Darren all sat talking about it. Again, they don't ask Quinny. They take Quinny to the zoo in frog outfits. She doesn't seem very into it. Quinny feels bad that Amory did all the campaign stuff without her. A lot of what we see in this episode is that everybody keeps walking off and leaving Quinni at the previous station, and it's like, well, you all came here for Quinni, why are you all leaving it? It kind of just feels like, no, this was actually for Quinni, it was for them. Because, well, especially Darren knows Quinni so well, so why would they all make surprise plans for an autistic person who doesn't like being surprised, really, likes to know what's happening, likes to know what the plan is, and likes to be included and let in on what's been going on so that they can feel included and like they're not missing out on things, even if they're not physically always there when stuff's happening. Just it's such a strange turn for everybody. Yeah, this is where she starts realising that she doesn't know anything about what's going on, because they start talking about stuff in front of her, or particularly Harper and Cash might mention something because they don't know Quinni as well as Darren and Amory are supposed to. And Quinni's like, oh, I have no idea about any of this stuff. Cash is the one that does notice that Quinni doesn't seem very present and doesn't seem to be enjoying herself outwardly anyway, and checks in on her. He accidentally brings up that they're all moving out and moving in together, Darren, Cash and Harper. Quinni doesn't even know. Nobody's mentioned this to her. And it's like, it's not related to literally anything else that you're trying to protect her from. Why wouldn't you mention any of this to her? And it does just feel like they're kind of doing what Sasha was doing in the first season, of being overprotective and kind of suffocating and deciding for Quinni what she can and can't handle or deal with, rather than just talking to her about it. And yeah, that's just what I mean, is in season 1, particularly Darren, it seems to be quite obvious and clear that they talk about stuff and they're more clear with their communications. So it just seems very strange for all of this to just flip on its head and Darren to think it'll be fine. And the others got her a gift, which was a new phone, but they did everything they could to make it look like her old phone without also being super clear about that. Yeah, it's just another one of those moments that makes it strange that, they understand that she doesn't like change, to the point that they get her a new phone and make it look as much as possible like the old phone, to try and make that transition easier for her. But that knowledge doesn't translate to anything else that's going on. She thinks that they found her phone, and she still wants to know who Bird Psycho is, because that's her way that she's kind of relating to the group at this point. It seemed to initially be from a mixture of a sense of justice, wanting to find out just the why, who and the why, but also being loyal and taking care of her friends. But the more that this has gone on, and the more she's being sort of iced out by everybody, the more she clings on to it, because she doesn't know anything else that's going on, because they're not fucking telling her anything. So what else is she gonna do but continue to try and focus on, talk about and relate with this particular thing that's happened or happening? And they all just kind of keep brushing it off as oh, it hasn't happened in a while. And it's like, well, why do you think that is? Isn't that weird? So yeah, she's then talking about, that everything is changing and how it's really stressful for her. How she's kind of given no time, no warning for any preparation. If we take, for example, everyone who's moving in together, they've all been kind of discussing this over a period of time. It's not just suddenly happened. She's not been let in on that conversation at all. And yeah, the one thing that she can control, can contribute to and connect with them on is Bird Psycho, and trying to help do that. So yeah, she then sort of runs off. Darren goes after her. Yeah, I just don't really know how got to this from season 1. Darren asks, how long have you been feeling like this? And she says, a while. I just didn't want to bother anyone about it. Quinni just says that, she wants things to slow down a little bit because she's struggling to keep up. And Darren says, we can't not grow as people because it's hard for you. I love you, but the world can't always play by your rules. And Quinni's just astonished, because for one, that's not what she said at all. And for another, she's like, my rules, it's never by my rules. I have to play by your rules, no matter how exhausting it is or how little sense it makes to me. And Darren says, then stop. As if it's that easy. Quinni says, okay then, I will stop. I'll stop masking starting now. And then she puts her headphones on and just looks out over over the zoo, and that's kind of it. Quinni packs up the Bird Psycho stuff when she gets home and is really sad about it. She feels really betrayed by her friends, particularly the friends she means are Darren and Anne-Marie. We eventually see that Rowan has Quinni's phone and repeatedly writes "forget Anne-Marie" over and over again in his notepad. As I was going through my notes for this, that also pinged a thought in my head as well of like, I think this is also why that plotline itself was a flop, because we found out before any of the other characters found out. So it wasn't exciting for us. We weren't discovering it with everybody. And I think as well, like, we got a lot more personal stuff about Rowan than we did about Zoe. Maybe we should have just kept our distance from Rowan more. Why were we always in his house? There were other ways of seeing his handwriting, or at least even like us seeing other people's handwriting who were on the table and being like, that doesn't match the handwriting that we're looking at. But yeah, I think the fact that we were just sort of like just given this information and didn't get to figure it out with Quinny was a bit of a flop for the show as well. Whilst I didn't like that whole plotline anyway, generally, I do think that was one of the main issues with its delivery of that particular plot line. Like, it was getting more and more obvious, like, who else is it going to be? I don't think they would have done a full Pretty Little Liars and just brought in some absolute fucking random person we've never seen before, which happens so often in Pretty Little Liars. I think people were either already figuring it out, or we would have had a better time watching Quinny figure it out and being confirmed that way rather than knowing first. And like, yeah, we just seem to find this out way before the end of the season too. So much more stuff is still to happen, and it just, yeah, I think it just, that made it lose a lot of the tension, because you're like, oh well, we know who it is now. He's not exactly been the most normal person on this season. Everyone's sort of confused now by how Quinny's communicating. She's only replying with seahorse emojis. She's not actually responding to messages. Quinny sits with Darren at one point, silent, no eye contact. I don't know if Darren started the conversation. I think they probably did, but she sort of says, sorry, I just didn't feel like replying. Anyway, this conversation is not interesting to me anymore, bye, and just gets up and leaves. And like, she's still this kind of bubbly self, just with a bit less facial expressions, definitely a lot less of like the neurotypical social rules aspect, you know, like the eye contact and stuff. She's very like blunt with how she feels, but her tone isn't necessarily monotone. And this is something that I find quite interesting as well, talking about masking in general, which is something I did sort of talk about a little bit in my last video, is that it's not that the person that people meet me as isn't me, but it is just kind of like only one aspect of me, and it's an aspect of me that does take a lot of energy and doesn't really give you a lot of me as a person. I think we see a lot more of that in these episodes, because there are some moments where you could see her hesitate before she makes a decision to continue with her unmasked self, to kind of like teach her friends a lesson, even though it's not fun or nice for anyone. It's necessary, I think. Sometimes the lessons you learn aren't going to be nice and easy lessons, and that's the only way that you're going to learn the lesson, unfortunately. They throw a party at the loft as like a housewarming. Darren is worried about Cash, sees Quinny arrive. She wasn't sure if she was going to go to the party either. She was like, I don't know if I feel like going. So Darren wants to talk to Quinny about Cash and the issues that they're having, and she is still there with her sort of like blasé, unmasked version of herself. And then Darren's like, I think I really need my jellyfish right now. And that's when you see her hesitate. You can see that internal conflict about whether she should still respond in this unmasked sort of scenario, or whether she should be the friend that she wants to be, and the friend that she is as well. It's like, you know, just because it's not something that you could always do does not mean it isn't you. I think friendship and communication is also a skill of its own. And being a good friend and being the kind of friend that you want to be for other people is a choice. That's a skill you learn. Like, everybody has to learn that skill in some way. However, I do feel like there's definitely a difference in how and what people pick up from that. I don't think masking is quite as simple as putting on a customer service face, for example. I feel like maybe it's a bit more of that, you know, fake it till you make it kind of mentality in a way. Pretend you're not going to have a fucking mental breakdown and you'll be fine. She decides to carry on with making her point, even though it's painful for her and for Darren. But also I think that moment as well is kind of showing that, you know, this is how you've made me feel, Darren. When I've reached out to you and you've basically pointing out that she's selfish to expect friends to meet her where she is at, when she meets her friends where they're at, and then being iced out of the group and iced out of everything that's going on with everybody. So that's kind of what she's doing. She's not communicating and she's just kind of doing her own thing. And then we see Quinny dancing on the tables, having the time of her fucking life. It's so funny. It's quite a brilliant little moment, to be honest. Yeah, Quinny talks about how she had more fun at this party because she wasn't worried about being too much or ruining people's lives. I think she says that the next day to Darren, and then she's like, I'm gonna go check on the geckos. Actually, that might have been Anne-Marie, but either way, she's not been informed of the baby that exists as well. There's then the debate Q&A thing for the captains. Anne-Marie's busy. Anne-Marie's busy, can't be there. Anne-Marie tells Malachi, Harper and Darren, not Quinny. Jojo asks Quinny where Anne-Marie is. Quinny just doesn't even respond. Darren tells Quinny that Quinny will have to go up and do the debate Q&A thing, and they'll explain later where Anne-Marie went. And Quinny's response is, I don't feel like it. Jojo then says that she has to go up there because she's Anne-Marie's vice captain, so she doesn't have a choice about whether she's up on the stage or not. Quinny just passes over the questions. She then has enough of everybody like doing their best to be like,
I am the best choice because I have all of these terrible reasons.
She tells everyone to shut up and then goes on a rant of her own, and she's asking the other people going for captain who people in the audience are. Quinny knows who everyone is because she notices, she pays attention, she watches people, she remembers things, whereas everybody else is just so swept up in their own world that they don't have a clue who half of the people in front of them are, who they're asking to vote for them. And she says, you two want to be leaders of the people, but you don't even know who you are leading. And then the Puritans are there like clicking for Quinny. But then yeah, she has like a really great speech that's like, oh, just vote for the bin. Anyway, bye. Then we have like a bake sale to raise money for the woodworking, something like that. The principal announces that the school actually voted for Quinny to be the captain, even though she wasn't running as a captain. Spidey yells,
She wasn't even running.
PE teacher starts a chant and then throws a cake that lands smack bang on the principal's fucking head, and then Spider turns it into a food fight. Everyone's like getting in there. Quinny's mostly standing in the middle just kind of like laughing, and oh, actually she does have a fidget toy at this point. And then someone smashes some cake in her face and she's just sort of laughing. Afterwards, they have a meeting with the principal, Anne-Marie, Quinny, to work out who does what. Anne-Marie happily like steps down. She says, you know, she should give the people what they want, and really she was just running for captain because she was trying to prove that she was a better person than she was. And, you know, after all, they did vote for Quinny, and Quinny accepts the role. I think Quinny said, you know, like, I'll be a good captain because I'm not going to tell you what you want, I'm going to ask you. People love autistics until they actually have an autistic in front of them, though. Anne-Marie tells her congratulations. Quinny says, oh, the tone of your voice says that you don't really mean that. And Anne-Marie explains why she missed the debate, and then leaves Quinny there. She just fucks off. And Quinny's then just like, cool, 1, another thing nobody told me about. 2, I'm now an asshole. But how would I know what the fuck has happened because none of you fucking talked to me? I don't remember the specifics of the last episode. I didn't really write a lot in my notes about it, but basically, eventually Quinny and Darren do make up. Quinny and Sasha work out who Bird Psycho is because Sasha found the posters. So they go and find the evidence, basically. The PE teacher sets fire to the school when there's a dance going on. Everybody from the dance is out on the field, except Anne-Marie, Harper and Rowan. Quinny runs into the fucking building to go save them or whatever. I don't really know what she was expecting to do. But obviously Harper and Anne-Marie know that Rowan is Bird Psycho now because of that. Anyway, what's been going on in the burning building, and that he locked them in there and was just going to let them all die. She runs in there, she lets them out, she helps get Harper out, who's like nearly completely passed out. Also, Cash has to hold Darren back. Darren sees that Quinny's running into this fucking building that's on fire. Quinny gets Harper out. Anne-Marie then helps Rowan out. Quinny and Sasha kind of, because of Sasha helping Quinny do this, they've kind of settled whatever weirdness there was, I guess, between them. And Quinny was like, we'd be good together. And Sasha was like, we shouldn't date. And she was like, I didn't mean that. I meant, do you want to be my co-captain? Because I am captain and I don't have a co-captain. And she's like, yes, slay, I do want that, thank you. If there is a school left after the fire. There is that moment between Quinny and Darren where Quinny's explaining why she was acting the way she's been acting the last few days, weeks, don't really know. There are some other things I would like to see a bit more of from Quinny plotlines. There's a few things that I've mentioned throughout this video, but other things that I'd like to see a bit more about that are a bit less glamorous and socially acceptable, I guess. I think it's more to do with like health issues. We don't really see a lot about her having difficulties with food. I would like to see more of that, like the struggles of restrictive eating, but not in a anorexia, bulimia, etc. kind of way, but more of an, I think it's ARFID, and the struggles of food textures more so than anything else. Other physical health issues like the impact of being autistic on possibly stress levels, which can affect blood pressure, affect anxiety, things like that. Does she have a therapist? Does she get other support? Like I said, I want to see more like of her like home parent support as well. Would like to know a bit more about the past. Maybe some discussion on ABA, that would be lovely. A little bit of discussion that is, don't do that, please. I mean, I know the actress also has endometriosis and I think EDS, so possibly including at least a little bit of the EDS, because that's definitely quite a common comorbidity with autism, is hypermobile collagen related disorders. Less glamorized meltdown, maybe a public meltdown, one that really tests the friendship she's got, having a meltdown in front of the whole school or something like that. I know that she had that big like speech, but like she was still able to speak and she wasn't like hitting herself and stuff. It wasn't the same as like the meltdown that we were shown in season 1. That was more of just like, oh my god, shut the fuck up, you're so annoying. And then yeah, maybe some more of this navigating between like, is the mask really a mask, or is it just me on my best day? Is that just me with more energy? Is that just me when I'm able to deal with or ignore certain sensory issues and needs for a while? Is that me when I've taken care of myself, the needs I have for a long period of time? What does it look like when she hasn't taken care of those needs for a long period of time? Yeah, I just think there's a lot more that can be explored with her character that I would like to see more of. I would maybe like to see her with some more autistic friends. Like, I'm pretty sure that friend from season 1 who she met at the book signing is probably autistic. Cash is probably autistic. I think Harper could be autistic. Who else did I say? Malachi. But we don't even know if he's going to be in season 3 because he flew away to fucking Switzerland. You know, I'd like to see maybe some of the people who maybe don't have an official diagnosis, and her being like, it's okay to not be officially diagnosed. More of that exploration as well. Like, there's just a lot of different ways we could go with some of these things. And like I said earlier about the whole like helping her neurotypical / allistic friends communicate more autistically, that will actually improve things for everyone and not just her. Many thoughts, big feelings. I love her. Many things were upsetting about these 2 seasons. Some were definitely more on purpose than others, I think. I do think it's a really great depiction of autism, of an autistic person, an autistic queer person, woman as well. And like I said, I really did love her friendship with Darren in season 1, and it was quite revolutionary in some ways because we just don't see autistic characters being normal people. I know that seems a bit, I don't know, counterintuitive, like, you know, autistic people aren't like other like neurotypical people or allistic people, but autistic people are also normal people. They're not always like a savant or whatever. They're not always like a science person or a maths person. You know, she seems to be more of a creative person, which I don't think we really get many depictions of. So yeah, I do just hope that there's a bit more of next season. Also maybe with like helping, oh my god, please give, just please stop Sasha from being like that. But help it make some sense in my brain, because like, I want to like her character, but she is so aggravating. I'm waiting for season 3 to give her a redemption arc, okay? So yeah, anyway, that was my rambling video of talking about Quinni from Heartbreak High. My next video on Heartbreak High stuff will probably be about Cash, so stick around for that if you love people talking about asexual characters, basically. I love him so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share the video if you haven't already as well, and I'll see you next week. Bye.